Hey, welcome back, everyone, to the Data Ideas Podcast. This is Dustin, and pleased to be joined by Gulrez Khan today. We are going to be talking about a number of things, but first, I am going to let Gulrez introduce himself.
Hey Dustin, thanks for having me. I'm Gulrez Khan. I'm a father of three beautiful kids and work as a data science leader at PayPal now. I worked at Microsoft, spent a huge amount of time at Microsoft. And over here, like I love playing around with open data sets even when I'm not working. And I love teaching kids data visualization, working on this book called Drawing Data with Kids, and happy to be on your show, Dustin.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks. I was really excited to do this interview. I was reading more about you and your book and your newsletter before we sat down here, and
Yeah,
I was mentioning it's really timely because I have a boy who's just starting to get curious about data and data
nice.
visualization and start to ask questions. And we've actually started to build some stuff together. But I think when you hear the questions that come up when they
Yeah,
start to build stuff, I
yeah.
now I'm realizing I think I need to go to your book here and have him take a look at it. But we'll get more into that.
How old is your son?
He's going to be 9 coming up here.
9. Okay, okay, that's
Yeah.
a good age. Yeah,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, in the last year, the curiosity has really
yeah,
started to be sparked. What's
yeah.
Dad working on, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, very cool, awesome. So you mentioned it a little bit in the intro, but you've worked for some really amazing companies. You're in Silicon Valley. We were talking about how I'm jealous of where you're at and the temperature difference between there and Milwaukee right now. But what's your favorite part of that whole experience of being involved in that tech scene out there?
Yeah, I think I've been very lucky. Like God has been very kind to me. I've been uh, able to meet so many people from different parts of the world, right? So here, I never ever imagined I'll work with so many talented people and like very good human beings.
Right.
They have supported me in different junctures, like when I started my career, and at any point of my time, like I've got these amazing mentors. And I'm so lucky, like to be at this beautiful place, sitting at my calm house, and then like talking to someone like you. So I think it's basically people that have played a big role in my life, and I'm grateful for all that I've got.
That's awesome. I love that answer. I feel very similar. Um, definitely am grateful to have found this field, and
Yeah,
um, there are a lot of good people, like you said, and a lot of the relationships I formed, I would have never expected to be able to, have such good relationships with such talented people, smart people, like you said. So
yeah.
definitely have that same gratitude. That's really cool. On your LinkedIn page, you have a quote that's prominently featured. I'm sure you know what it is, but it says that if you listen carefully to data, it talks.
Hmm.
It will tell you stories. End quote. So, what does it mean to you to listen carefully to data?
Yeah. So let me give you some background, right? So when I gave you my introduction that, hey, I'm a data science leader at PayPal and all that stuff, right? So, but if you shift back like maybe 17, 18 years back, you would meet a 22-year-old guy who's never interested in computers, like someone who is more into maybe writing poems, writing stories, writing books. And that's what I was. And I never imagined that I would be sitting a whole day in front of the computers, right? But then when I found this field of data, like it was very interesting because I used to tell stories. But then when I look into the numbers, I started analyzing those numbers, and you see different insights, right? So even now, right now, when we are talking to each other, you would see there are different things. Like in my background, you would see few of my caps and everything else. These are all data points, right? And if you start scratching the surface, every data point has a story to tell. So it's only about the listener out there who can find out those insights, understand what those stories are, and then you can paint a beautiful picture out of it. So this is amazing. I'm very passionate, as you can see, about
Yeah,
the data.
I love it. Very cool. Uh, So how did you first get interested in this whole topic of data and data visualization?
Yeah. So I think again, like it's by chance. Like as I said, like go back to 17 years or 18 years back.
Mhm.
After completing my graduation, I joined this company called Tata Consultancy Services,
Yeah. Hmm.
and over there I got the opportunity to like be in this new project in which was the latest technology of Microsoft SQL Server 2005 at that time.
Okay.
And that's where like it was completely new. Not many people in my company were have worked on that, so I was thrown into that, and I started doing some ETLs and those transformations. So I loved doing that. Like it was good to see what's coming out of it. And then later point in my career, like I started like from just doing the ETLs, I started doing the visualization. And that's where like it occurred to me, like again, as I said, the 22-year-old who was not interested to sit in front of computer. I
Right.
said, okay, this is somewhere something where I can use my creative hat, right? So this is where I can use my skills of what I used to draw, or like kind of kind of writing a poem, telling stories. And then like if you have that kind of a passion, people see that, and then you get appreciation, and you go more in deep into that. So that's how like I started, and like it's never stopping.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting you make the comment that if people see the passion, that's something that's really attractive to others. And it's an interesting thing because it's not so much a technical thing, but I've found that in
Hmm.
my career in analytics, like especially recently as I've gone into more leadership roles or
Yeah,
strategy roles, folks make this comment to me that kind of comes out of nowhere. I'm kind of surprised when I hear, but they're like, I like the energy that you bring to the
yeah,
discussions on this. I like the passion that you have on
yeah.
it. And it's like, for me, it's just natural to have that,
Right, right.
but there is something to that where people notice
Hmm.
that.
Yeah,
And I can't say what one or two or three things it is that helped me kind of move up in the field, but that
yeah.
seems to be something that people notice. And you kind of just said it.
Definitely. So, to give an example, right? So, I also do these corporate workshops on the side. And again, like how it started is like I was sitting there in Microsoft Office, and we used to have this thing called Data Club, like a fight club. There's a thing
You're
called
right.
Data Club. And that's where like I said, okay, maybe I should go there and do some presentation of data visualization because I'm passionate. But again, like I am an introvert person, not
Mhm.
very keen to go in front of the audience. But anyways, I went, and I went and I gave the presentation over there. And my calculation in back of my mind was at least two people should be there, like should be able to listen to the whole conversation or the
Right.
whole presentation. But luckily, like no one left, like everyone was like sitting there and listening. And then later I got emails right after my presentation, you brought so much energy into the room, and like there was so much passion. And then like it just brought like from one presentation to others, like people started calling in different teams and then outside in conferences. So it's just again, like if people are listening, and they usually ask me this question, how do we become a better speaker and
Right.
all those things. You just take that first step. So take that first step and then see how it works out. I think like that first step, if I haven't taken, I wouldn't be where I am today. So just throwing it out.
No, I love that, and it reminds me of over the last week I was on
Yeah.
a panel discussion where folks were
Uh-huh.
asking. So the moderator asked a question, and I think I was the first one up to answer it on.
Yeah.
Uh, do you think it's worthwhile to invest in kind of brand building and putting yourself out
Hmm.
there, things like that? And I of course I advocated for it. I gave an answer,
Yeah.
but I posted on LinkedIn a few days ago in follow up to
Yeah.
it. I thought, what? As I looked at the image,
Yeah.
there was a snapshot of me on this panel. I thought, what? If I hadn't said yes to some things early on and invested in some of
Right.
those things, I wouldn't have
Yeah.
actually been on that panel answering that
Yes,
question, right?
yes, yes, definitely. And
Yeah.
have you ever thought, like when you were in those kind of panel discussions, that hey, are you really suited to be that there, there in that
Of
panel, right?
course. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like it happens with me all the time. Like
Yeah.
someone invites me into panel for sitting in front of these hundreds of people, and I would
Right.
say, "Am I the right person to be there?"
Totally.
And there's this imposter syndrome, like which
Yeah.
kicks in.
Yep, totally. Yeah. And it's funny you say that too, because I'll just say that and this should be an encouragement for folks listening. I
Right,
looked at
right.
your, profile obviously
Yeah,
beforehand, as I do with
yeah,
everyone that I
yeah,
talk with.
yeah.
And, um, you're a very accomplished professional in the field. I mean, I was left with this impression of, wow, like, it's really impressive the work that you've done. But now, I hear you say that, and it's
Right.
like, that should encourage anyone, that everyone thinks that way and has those reservations, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's just like if you look from the outside, especially like for LinkedIn and other places, people think like this person has figured out everything, right?
Right.
And we are in awe for those people that hey, this me, I should be like this person. But if you again like analyze closely, like this person is shivering like when they are talking to you,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
then I remember, right? So my daughter asked, she's 10-year old, and she asked me this question the other day. Abu, like when you were my age, what was the time which made you nervous? And I said, I still remember, like I said, it was giving a presentation or like a praying thing that we used to do in convent school. That every morning you'll have the one class would go in front of all the children, and then they read about something,
Sure.
and it was my turn and I was shivering, and then my classmates like would make fun of that, and I said like I still remember that. And she asked like do you do that, do you still do that? I said yes, I still do that. The first 2 minutes in any presentation,
Right.
if I go, I still do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's
so
awesome. Well,
yeah,
so
yeah,
yeah,
I
no,
don't know
go
like
ahead.
if she said like if I still do that, but I just wanted to throw it out that
Right.
I still do that. And every presenter out there, if you see, no matter they have given a TED talk or something, like
Right.
there is still that person who is afraid and fearing the audience.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. It's hard. It's hard for everyone. I've heard, even I was actually just thinking about this morning. I remember one of the best speakers that I know. Um, they made a comment once that someone said to them, what we really want from you is for you to speak more. And they were like, oh, like they just could hardly stomach it, because they said what people don't know is that for every hour they talk, and again, this is one of the best speakers I've ever heard,
Yeah,
they
yeah,
invest 20 hours into preparation into that 1 hour. And that
that
it's really
is,
hard for
yeah,
them to do it, but yet, and they do it all the time. I'm like, wow, like,
yeah, yeah,
very
yeah,
cool. So thinking about this is a good segue. You mentioned that question that one of your kids had. It's cool that you have these discussions with your kids, and I think it's good for them to hear those honest answers like what you gave them. What was your inspiration? So you wrote this book to educate kids on data visualization
yeah,
and data analytics, and there's not a lot of, from my perspective, maybe I haven't seen it, but there's not a lot of literature or curriculum out there for younger kids
yeah.
on data visualization. I guess first question is have you seen the same? And then also, what was your inspiration kind of in writing this book?
Yeah. So to answer the first question, yes, I haven't seen any material out there for the younger kids where you can uh, teach them. Like I've seen like they in their courses they have some graphs or something that gets introduced, but not to my satisfaction that I wanted. And that's where like read somewhere like if you haven't seen a book that you want, write that book. So that's where like I thought maybe I should think of it and see what could be done. But again, going back to like how I shifted to this thing that hey, I should write a book, right? So one thing, as I said, like I'm very passionate about data and data visualization. Even when I'm not working, like I'm a visual person. I keep thinking from that
Right.
perspective that hey, how can you visualize this thing? How can you draw something and all that stuff. So I have that thing in my mind. Now another thing is, as I said, like I'm a father of three kids, a 10-year-old, a 6-year, and a 3-year. Now, I spend a lot of time with them. We don't have a television at home, and that means like I'm a source of entertainment for them. So I read books with them, tell stories, and we have this activity of drawing with them, and they very much enjoy. Now, when I'm doing all these activities, back of my mind, I'm still a data person, and I'm thinking, okay, if I'm just drawing a tree or something, how can I bring data into that?
Hmm.
And that's why, like, I always been thinking. And then the other thing which happened is with COVID, our kids get to be in our office every now and then. You would have your 9-year-old son coming to your office and asking, "What are you doing there?"
Right.
Same thing, like I've got my 6-year-old who was a 4 or 5-year-old, and he just like right now sitting, standing behind me, and I was creating this tree diagram, which was about like some Reddit questions. Like it was an open data set that I was doing, and he says, "Abu, this looks like a mosque." And I said, "What?" I thought he had some kind of a Lego piece in his hand or something. And he pointed like towards my graph. And I said, "How?" And then I tilted my head and I see, okay, from this angle, it does looks like a dome of a which resembles a mosque.
Interesting.
Okay, that's interesting, and that was refreshing, right? Because what's happening is we adults, like when we are doing our work, we always think from a limited set of ideas or pre-conventions that we have, and this was refreshing. And I said, okay, this is something which is cool, and that's when I said, okay, maybe I should get involve the kids. And my 6-year-old, like who was 4-year-old at that time, he was too younger. But then my 10-year-old daughter, like I started, she also comes in and she would peek into my monitor and ask questions. Initially I would shoot her away that, hey, I'm busy at work. But now, like with these kind of conversations, I bring them in. I said, okay, this is what I'm doing, and they provide certain other commentary to that, and it gives me more ideas. And that's how, like, I the idea occurred to me that, hey, I should start teaching them or working them on data visualization. So that's why, like, it again, it was nothing about the book. So I started doing this activity that, hey, let's create this graph for the activity that we are doing, maybe for your name or for your favorite chocolate. You write the spelling, and let's say your chocolate name is Kit Kat, right? So the number of letters in Kit Kat is 6. How many consonants are there? How many vowels are there? And then we create a stacked bar graph. So like that, like we did some activities. I shared this with my office colleagues, and they were really appreciative of it, and we kept doing that every now and then. And again, like I posted on LinkedIn, so the people were able to resonate, and they wanted something that they want to do with their kids as well. So that's how I said, okay, let's convert this into a book now. So that's how, like, it all started.
Wow, that's awesome. That's a really cool story, and I'd love to link to some of these examples in the show notes.
Yeah,
So maybe
sure.
you can send me some good links
Yes,
so
yes,
listeners
yes.
can actually see it. Very cool. That's awesome. Um, have any of your coworkers started to do some of the same activities? Have you heard with their kids?
Yeah, yeah. So they are doing those activities, and again, like they have sent some screenshots as well. I conduct few workshops as well. Like initially, when I shared this thing and people were interested, I did a workshop for the kids, and I was creating a timeline, right? So every time I do this presentation or this workshop, I give a timeline to the audience that, hey, this is when I started my career, this is when I was here, so kind of a timeline, and then this is where I am today. And I did the same thing with the kids, and I told them, now you create a timeline based on where you are in your life right now. And these are like 8 years, 10 years old. And I remember like one coworker, Padma, like her son who was 11 years old, and he created this beautiful timeline. Like, this is the year I was born, and then this is the year when my sister was born.
Cool.
This is when we went to India. This is when COVID hit, and all
Right.
this thing. So it was good to see, like, from kids' perspective, how they do the same stuff which we do for our job.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
yeah.
Cool. That's awesome. Yeah, it's I can relate to I've got all these, you can't see it, but I've got all these monitors up here, with stuff I work on in my office, and my office is in my home, and I spent a lot of time here during
Hmm.
COVID. And my son and daughter would come up here, and they'd see a Tableau chart up or something, and they'd say,
Yeah.
"Hey, what's that?"
Yeah.
And why is that line that color, and why is that
Yeah.
line above the other line, and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And it opened up some really fun conversations. And one of
Right.
the things that it led to was my son wanted to start charting out some stuff about his favorite. He is really into anime and ninjas and
Nice.
stuff like that. And
Uh-huh.
so what he wanted to do was like build a chart on the ninja ratings of some of his favorite characters. And so
Wow.
he started by we started by just making a list of the names and the ninja
Right.
ratings he would put on there and stuff like that. But we did jump right into putting them into worksheet, a Google sheet, and then starting to play around in
Right.
Tableau. But as I'm
Nice.
thinking about that, gosh, that opens up all these other questions, and then he gets all these other ideas, of course,
Right.
just like we do when we build a data
Right.
visualization.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that leads me to my next question. Why do you think it's so important to start out with drawing data first rather than
Right.
kind of going and learning, the tools and starting to jump
Right.
in from that
Right.
side?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there are two things which comes to my mind. One is, like, when I do these data storytelling workshops. Again, that's where I talk to the audience that even when they are creating a presentation or any dashboard or something or a story, right? So they need to start with pen and paper, because when you start with a tool, you get into this fixed mindset that, hey, I'll be able to do things only with this specific tool, and you get distracted and lots of those things. And drawing a parallel from what people do in data journalism, like if you look into the New
Mm-hmm.
York Times, which I
Mm-hmm.
follow, they send out this thing that, hey, this is was something that they drew with hand, and this is the final product. So I think I try to follow this thing for my own, and it works. It gives me lots of ideas, and I get not limited by the tool set. So that's what I tell to my workshop attendees. But towards my kids, like, that's a different story. The story over there is, like, we are quite mindful as a family about limiting the screen time, even for
Sure.
studies, right?
Yeah.
So right now with COVID and everything, like, it has increased. And so I wanted to do something, but I wanted to do it offline, not on the screen. So it has a few benefits. One is, like, again, like as I said about the adults, that, hey, there is less distraction. The second thing is, when they are doing it with a pen and crayon and on paper, they are still doing this art thing, right? So they are able to change a graph from maybe a vertical bar to like a kind of a flower, like in different shapes. Like, it's having more fun. And we do those activities, and I try to follow them, and you get more joy out of it. Like, you increase this parent child bonding as well. And that's what I see. Otherwise, like, if you imagine I give them my laptop and say, okay, there is this Excel sheet, put the data, and you do that, they will have to do that eventually. They will be sitting in front of the computers going forward, but you can still make them data literate without the screen time. So that's like, as a father, that's my concern, and that's why I try to do that. And that's what I would encourage, like, for people who are thinking about introducing data to their kids, or people who buy my book or the newsletter, like, use pen and paper. They will be in front of computers later on.
I love that. No, I think that's good advice. And one thing I'm curious about, I was looking at your Kickstarter page for back when you were launching the project on, I think you'd already written the book, right? But the Kickstarter was to publish it and distribute it, right?
Yeah. So the thing is, I'm doing. as a self-published author. Like
Yeah.
I talked to few publishers, and we were like the one publisher was interested to move forward, but again, like I didn't see a good return on investment on that. So
Yep.
I said, okay, I'll do it by my own, and that's
Cool.
why like I talked to some person in my office, and they suggested there is this Kickstarter thing. So I did the Kickstarter. I wasn't very sure like how would it land, but I'm
Right.
pretty help. Like we are 200% funded, and there were around 100 people who have already ordered the book, which is like pretty exciting.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So the Kickstarter project is now closed, but again, like. It's I'm grateful for so many people who came out and liked the idea.
Yeah, that's awesome. I saw the goal was well exceeded on there, which is
Yeah.
awesome. Congrats on that. Um, I also noticed that there was a reference to some coloring pages, which I was curious about because that was something I was interested in getting for my kids. Um, so how do the coloring pages factor into all this? They're not part of the book, right?
Yeah, coloring pages is something like I haven't been thinking of adding that as part of the book. Like it was part of a reward program. So with Kickstarter, what you do is like you've got different level of rewards that you buy one book, it's for this cost. You can buy a bundle, or so there was kind of a bundle that I created, and I thought like some people would be interested in color, so that's what added that. So that was part of the Kickstarter thing. But again, like if people are interested on the color book as well, maybe I can explore the idea of maybe adding that in the later editions or something.
Cool.
Right now, like what the book offers is the book is so to talk about the book, right? So again,
Yeah.
it's not a conventional book that you would see like again, like if you think of introducing data visualization to kids, what are the chapters you would think of? You would maybe start with what is data, what are the different types of data types, what are the different type of charts which are available, and then you do some kind of exercises. To me this looks like more of a curriculum type activity, and
Sure.
then I am personally like I am not very keen on opening a book like that. But let's say if it was a different book, like it was a story book, right? That's where like I would be more interested in reading that, and if I'm able to apply the knowledge that I have learned in those story format, I would be more happy. So that's the difference of the book that I'm working on, right? So here in this book, like this is about a dad and daughter. Like again, this is a realistic fiction. Me and my 10-year-old daughter, how we talk about certain things. So for example, one chapter like how it started is Pariza, my 10-year-old daughter. Like we had a few stories in between, but a few things in between. But then she comes to my office and she found chocolate wrappers, and she gets annoyed that you eat chocolates when I'm asleep, and that's the fact. When my kids are asleep, like that's where I crave for sugar and I eat chocolates, and that's how like one of the story starts. And then we start, okay, chocolates. Let's write down the name of your favorite chocolates. So she writes down the name of favorite chocolates. We create a bar graph out of it. The bar graph is created with the number of letters in each name. So Kit Kat, 6 letters. You've got some other chocolate, it's a different length of the uh, letters, right? So with that, like you have people are able to relate to that, and that's how different chapters roll in. And that gets back to like for me as well when I was learning data science, right? So coming from India and starting my data science journey, I look into different data sets. One of the data set that we all are familiar with is iris data set, right? So this is iris is a flower, and you are doing some kind of a clustering, and there are these different type of uh, iris flowers. I don't remember like those different categories. This is called vernacular or some other thing. I'm not someone who is very passionate about it. So if you are introducing a subject with this kind of a data set that you are not familiar with, it makes it more difficult, right? So that's the idea. Like when I'm introducing data visualization to my kids or to the others, it should be very simple. So that's why, like, you know your name of your chocolates, you know what is a consonant, you know what is a vowel. So that's how we create those graphs. Another graph that we created was introducing a heat map to them, right? How do I do that? So for that, I took a map of United States, and you've got different states at different places, and we counted the number of letters again. And you see that you've got Utah, which is 4 letter long. It is for one color, but then if you have got another one called Mississippi, it is 13 or 14 characters long. And
Mm-hmm.
that's how, like, we say, okay, if it is this long, we make it a red color. If Utah is very small, it is green. Otherwise, everything in between is yellow.
Sure.
This is your heat map for you, right? If I talked about a different data set, maybe how much wheat production or some other data set, maybe they might not be as interested, or it could be difficult to understand. But now, like, this is easy, right? So the idea is how you can make things easy and introduce these things. So
For sure. That's awesome. That's really cool. Are you finding that they're thinking more about data, in their everyday to day activities since they've been
right.
starting doing this?
Yeah, yeah. So my daughter, like, she keeps talking about, like, she started thinking like me. Like, as I think about, okay, there is this type of so when there is it was a rain, right? So it was raining. I said, and we were driving the other day, and my daughter, like, she talks from the back seat. She says, "Abu." I said, "What?" And she said, "Maybe we can do a project." I said, "What project?" "A data project." And then I'm so happy. I said, "Okay, what data project?" And she says, "The number of droplets which are hitting the windscreen." And I said, "Windshield." And I said, "Oh, okay." It does look like a scatter plot if all those droplets are
Yeah,
coming
true.
in,
That, yeah.
right? So, but yeah, like, she has started thinking on those lines, which, so with this, like, what happens is they are less uh, what do I say, less afraid when they look into the graphs
Hmm.
growing up, right? So at this age when everything is about data, right? We have got humongous amount of data everywhere, and
Hmm.
people are showing graphs and everything else. They need to be able to read those graphs. They should not be afraid that, hey, what does it even mean? So I think with these exercises, if you do as a kid, I think they will be less afraid of those graphs, and maybe they'll start using those things. So that's the intention. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, that's awesome. It makes a lot of sense. I think the same would be true for adults as well. I mean, as they get, start with simple learnings and get more confident, and understanding the foundations behind things that they're talking about or being asked to work with. I mean, it's the same thing. Their confidence
Right.
increases. So I think that's really cool and makes a lot of sense. You mentioned that they're less afraid of kind of looking at the charts and kind of digging into what they might mean. What do you hope that kids that go through this book, what's your hope in terms of how they view the importance of data, I guess.
Yeah. So just as one thing is, like, they don't get afraid when they look into the data, and
Hmm.
then from the importance perspective, they will see, right? So it's not something that I teach that, hey, why data is important, and they have to see that in their day job, like, as they grow up, that, hey, data is really important. So but again, like, when data comes in front of them in textbook or in videos or in other formats, they should not be afraid when they look into these data sets. So that's my hope with that. Yeah.
For sure. And how do you think, as parents, how do you think we can help encourage our kids to learn more about data? I mean, obviously drawing data is one of the ways. Are there any others that you think just in general we can do?
Yeah. So I think like irrespective of what you're trying to teach them, it's more about spending time with them.
Right.
I was doing another workshop, a presentation about my book, and someone asked what worked and what didn't work, or like the specific question was like, what didn't work for you, which we should avoid as a parent. And I said, I tried doing stuff like with them, which worked great. But then when I gave them that, hey, do this thing, like there is this data type that you use, and then you create a graph and then show me. It didn't work. What were they enjoying? They were enjoying the parents sitting with them and doing that activity with them. Right?
Right.
So they were enjoying the time. So it was not about what you are trying to teach them. They will gain this, like next time when they see a graph, they will remember that, hey, I did this activity with my dad and we had a
Right.
fun time and we ate a chocolate after that, right? So they will remember those things. So I think it's about spending time with them, and you do that offline, so that will make you and them less distracted, and eventually if they learn, like it's good for both of you.
Very cool. Yeah, that's an awesome message. I love it. What so you've got the Kickstarter campaign is done. You've got the book as well as the newsletter. How can folks go about getting, A, the book, and then B, on your newsletter if they'd like as well?
Yeah. So the book, I don't know like when this episode would be published, but the book should be out there in couple of weeks on Amazon.
Okay,
Right
perfect. It will be
now,
out at the time this is published then. Yep.
okay, awesome.
Yep.
Yep. So the book right now you can pre-order the ebook, but again I would encourage the offline thing.
Hmm.
Uh, so the book should be out there on Amazon where people should be able to get
Awesome.
those that. And the newsletter is on my LinkedIn right now, and people can subscribe to that. And that's where like I try to share those activities which I do with my daughter, and I give some kind of exercises that you can follow on with your kids as well.
That's awesome. Very cool. I will for sure. Once the book is on Amazon, I'll put the link into the show notes for this episode, so that by the time folks are listening to this, they can see the link underneath the episode. And then same thing for the newsletter. Also, when I announce the episode on LinkedIn, we'll be sure to share the
Sure.
Amazon link too. Yeah, that's awesome. Congratulations on getting a book published. It's an amazing accomplishment, and this is just I think, a tremendous contribution to the world to be able to help educate kids on data and what they can do with it, and also give, to your point, parents an opportunity to do something meaningful with their kids, offline. To your point,
Right, right.
yeah.
You're very kind with your comments. Thank you. I really appreciate
No,
that.
it's easy to do. I mean, I think other people are going to agree when they're listening to this. This is really awesome. So one last question I do always ask. This is a little bit off the topic, but I always ask every guest that comes on. And you have all this experience in the field, so I definitely have to ask you, in terms of use cases for analytics and modern analytics, could be anything, but what's your personal, one or two kind of favorites that are out there?
Yeah. So I think as you said, like it can be anything, and for me it's about understanding the business. Like in my day job, I
Hmm.
interview and I talk to people to understand like what is the problem you're trying to solve.
Hmm.
Often like in the data science space, I think people are very fascinated about using the new technologies, that hey, if we want to use the neural network and all these latest technologies. But then like if you want to be successful, you want to make a dent into the business, like how you can understand, like being a subject matter expertise like is really important. And I often see like the business folks don't know how to leverage the data science folks, and the data science folks, they don't know much about the business. So
Right.
there is a big gap out there.
For sure.
Now in terms of like what's my favorite, again like as I've said earlier in the podcast, I'm about people. Like I benefited a lot
Hmm.
from people, so that's where uh, I try to look from like the pain of people, which comes in the form of customer feedback, right? So if you look into the customer feedback, there's a bunch of things, a bunch of stories that comes out of it, right? And that can make a very powerful impression. Like if you start, like for example, I moved to this new group over here at PayPal, and I wanted something, a short, something which I can achieve in a short term, right? So low hanging fruit. So low
Mhm.
hanging fruit, like if you would go and attack customer feedback, people are already like quoting customer feedback in their different presentation. But here, as a data person, you go, you analyze the customer feedback data, and then using with verbatim and then storytelling, it makes a very powerful outcome of it. So it helped me a lot. And then there, all these uh, sentences or the words like natural language processing, you can do
Mhm.
on those things. You analyze those Slack messages, right? So you've
Mhm.
got a different Slack groups that you may have.
Mhm.
You again the same tech, same scripts that you run on customer feedback, you
Right.
can run on Slack messages, or even the show notes for the Data Ideas podcast, right?
Mhm.
So I will go and I'll explore that, and I say, okay, well, what are the different hosts Dustin has interviewed, and then
Mhm.
what comes out of it. So
Yeah.
this is like kind of a very fascinating piece for me, which I enjoy.
Cool. Yeah, no, I love that. I think there is a lot of power behind that, those use cases. Um, now you have, well, as you were talking, I was actually thinking about some ideas for how I could apply that. So I've taken some notes here, but that's awesome. I love it, and I would encourage folks to think about how they could, apply that use case
Mhm.
in their own roles or even personally as well. But very cool. So definitely encourage everyone to check out the book Drawing Data with Kids. I'm going to put the link to the book in the show notes. It will be out most likely by the time this is released, so it should be there right away. Um, Anything else you want to chime in on? How can folks follow you?
So right now I'm active on LinkedIn, so that's where
Hmm.
like people can follow me. And again, like as I said earlier, like you don't when you think of following people, don't
Hmm.
think that this person has figured out everything.
Right.
Everyone is learning, and you take your first step.
Very cool. I love it. Gulrez, thank you so much for joining and coming and talking about your experiences in this book. This has been really enriching. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Dustin.
All right. Thanks. And we'll see
Take
everyone
care.
back in a couple weeks for the next episode.